scale of change that you did at Rovio was across 23 games, right?
Correct.
Multiple studios.
Yes.
I can't even remember the number. You told me before.
5 studios.
5 studios.
23
games. There's new ones and there's older games as well. So we definitely had to create a very solid plan. I only saw the plan that we worked together, but I can't imagine what it's like internally to kind of develop that strategy and the human resources behind kind of planning out that migration. Can you tell us a little bit about that and how you kind of navigated change management? Because the larger the gaming studio, the larger it is, the effort and also the key stakeholders that you need to get buy-in from.
Okay, let's book this room for 30 more minutes if I am going to have to do the whole story, but I'll keep it like quite top level. We already knew for a long time that our provider was not a provider that we would partner up with for a very long time. We were already planning 1 year before we signed with Helpshift that we were going to go into a particular kind of direction where we would want to utilize automation and bots a lot more. That actually meant that, well, 1 year before we actually made the shift, we already started to review the way how we had set up FAQs, how our canned responses were set up. So where we were working with emails before, we could use long text or long form text. That would not work with bots. You cannot on a mobile device send a user like 120 lines on this is how you do this in the game or how you utilize this feature. So we already started dividing up our canned responses into particular kind of steps that we thought this is where a bot would have this interaction. Then the end user or the player would actually respond with this question, with this answer or this answer. Let's already create a wireframe of what kind of forks we would have into our interactions with the bots. So we already started doing that way ahead. And had we not done that, I am quite sure that we would have run into serious problems, especially because we had a huge amount of games in our portfolio in order to deal with. So what we also had to think about was how do we consolidate technically everything from all our games, but also all our studios. Because we had, as Rovio, we had acquired several studios, started up new studios, and we had these different kind of cultures within each of these studios, while still being part of the bigger Rovio kind of culture, but it also meant that the operations worked completely differently. They had different ways of working. So we tried to consolidate everything like that. We tried to put on paper, or digital paper, what the ideal ways of working would be with support, how we would actually transition from an email-based service provider to an in-app service provider. What we also did was we did our homework with our central tech team, because what we knew was that we can just like integrate Helpshift and that would solve it. No, obviously not, because that would just allow us to like just send responses or put automations out there, but it would be working on no data. So what we had to do was use our centralized data platform and try to integrate that with it, or at least link with Helpshift, so that when an agent actually gets a conversation from a player, they would have a link that would immediately bring them to the dashboard of that particular player profile so that they could interact on that. But also on the other end, we also could pull data from our centralized data platform and put it into Helpshift so that we can run automations and bots on top of that data, which makes it super powerful because that would allow us to like create the ideal workflows, make sure that people who have been stuck with a particular kind of problem or have a particular kind of spend tier, that they would follow a different kind of flow than someone else would. Same with languages. If you have like one market where you know that there's a particular kind of event going on and it's not in other language-based markets, then you can just use that data and create a workflow to actually just only get those people in a particular kind of queue, have that visible to particular kind of agents. Yeah, I'm nearing those 30 minutes already, I have the feeling. There is a lot more that I can tell, but it was not a small feat. It definitely it isn't. And I think, well, when we're touching on pitfalls, I think I can elaborate a bit more about this, but it's not to be underestimated what you're doing. It is not just yanking out one system and replacing it with another. You need to be fully prepared with that. You need to assess the risks.